Pixar's rise to becoming one of the world's most influential animation studios wasn't easy. In fact, most people probably don't know the full extent of their story, or how profoundly they impacted not just animation, but the entire film industry. Their journey involves people you'd never expect to be involved. So I thought it was worth telling Pixar's story in a full video. If that sounds good to you, sit back, relax, and enjoy. The story begins in 1975 at an art college called Cal Arts, created by Disney to teach animation to students. Among those students was John Lasseter, whom many now recognize as the creator of Toy Story and other Pixar classics. Back then though, he was just a young artist dreaming of making animation his career. John became the first Cal Arts student to win back-to-back awards for his short films, landing his dream job as an animator at Disney Studios in 1979. There he worked as a lead animator on Disney's The Fox and the Hound in 1981. But everything changed a year later with the release of Tron, a live-action film incorporating digital animation. When Disney screened it for employees, John was thrilled by the potential he saw. But Disney's leadership feared computer animation could make traditional animators obsolete. John was one of the only ones who disagreed and wanted to work with the digital animation himself. He eventually gained approval to develop a short called The Brave Little Toaster, and remembered this name because it becomes important later. After 8 months of work, John presented his concept to the studio head Ed Hansen. Hansen dismissed the idea, saying Disney would only use computer animation if it made production faster or cheaper, and then walked out. 5 minutes after that meeting, Hansen called John to his office and fired him. That marked the end of John's time at Disney, at least for now. But to understand what came next, we need to backtrack a bit to another key player in this story, Ed Catmull. Ed shared John's passion for animation and storytelling, but he instead focused on developing the technology behind computer animation. One of his early achievements was a program called Tween, which transformed hand-drawn animation into digital form, allowing artists to draw and paint directly on computers. This innovation caught the attention of George Lucas, who hired Ed to work on advanced digital effects for his Star Wars movies. Together, they formed a new computer animation division at Lucasfilm. The place where Ed and John's paths crossed was at a computer graphics conference in 1983. Ed found John and asked him how his digital short film, The Brave Little Toaster, was doing. John told him that it was canceled and he was leaving Disney. It was here Ed offered him a job in Lucasfilm's computer division. It was a perfect match. They immediately challenged John to animate characters for a short film. This short film was Andre and Wally B. John also returned the favor and challenged the technical team to create new software to allow him to animate these characters. They developed techniques that allowed them to do things never before achieved with computers, like motion blur. John was quoted as saying during this time that the art challenges technology and the technology inspires the art, a cycle of each group constantly pushing each other to bigger heights. John and Bill Reeves had an opportunity to work with ILM to create one of the first fully digital characters in film, the stained glass man in the movie Young Sherlock Holmes in 1985. Even after achieving this, Ed and his team at Lucasfilm wanted to continue to advance the technology. And it was then that they created the Pixar Image Computer, which was the most advanced graphics computer of its time. It was mainly used in the medical field to transform 2D images into 3D images. This was a bit of a problem financially because of how limited the markets were, and caused George Lucas to start to lose interest because he didn't want to run a company that sold software to medical companies. Even though Ed and John wanted to use this technology to make full-feature films, it just wasn't there yet, and they didn't have enough money backing it. This was when they decided to divert the division in Lucasfilm and just call it Pixar. Their only goal was to find an investor who could see its future potential, and they might have landed the only person at the time who would. Steve Jobs at the time was a multi-millionaire. Ed shared with Jobs his dream to create the world's first fully computer animated film, and Jobs bought into that dream. He invested $10 million into Pixar. With this money, they decided to create a short film, with the main character being the classic lamp we all know and love today. The title was Luxo Jr. John was working very hard now, oftentimes sleeping under his desk at the office to continue animating the short films. Their third short film, Tintoy, became the first ever computer animated film to win an Oscar in 1989. Pixar continued to create softwares like RenderMan, which allowed movies like Jurassic Park to be made with fully computer animated dinosaurs in 1993. As the company started seeing industry success, they began hiring new animators like Pete Docter and Andrew Stanton, who obviously we now know went on to be directors of Pixar movies. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because even with the success of this short film, making Toy Story for John still wasn't easy. The development of all these softwares started costing more money than the company itself was bringing in. Steve Jobs was losing over $1 million a year for 5 years straight. Luckily, Jobs still believed in the future, but he needed more outside help. At this time, Disney wanted to steal John back to work for them as a director, but John refused because he still believed in the idea of Pixar making their own animated film. And after explaining to Disney his idea for Toy Story, Disney agreed and made a deal with Pixar to make it into a full feature-length film. Making the film was still a struggle, as Pixar wanted to find their own identity and not do a musical or fairy tale like Disney films have done before. The initial test looked much different than the final product we all know and love, and Disney was trying to influence the film to be something it was never intended to be. Disney wanted the movie to be more adult-like, and as a result, Pixar made Woody mean and negative in the initial tests. Because of how bad these initial storyboards turned out to be, Disney shut down production on Toy Story. Everyone at Pixar refused to give up though. They spent time rewriting the script and worked day and night to fix the movie. They redesigned the characters and re-storyboarded the whole movie in only 3 weeks, and then showed it to Disney again. Disney said okay and allowed them to resume production, and the rest is history. Toy Story opened nationwide on Thanksgiving weekend in 1995 and went on to earn more than $350 million. It paved the way for this new industry of computer animation, not just because of the technical accomplishments, but because the storytelling was created by people who had heart and cared about their craft. As you know, with their next films, A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles, Pixar essentially ended the era of 2D animation, and Steve Jobs' initial investment of $10 million paid off, as Disney bought Pixar in 2006 for $7.5 billion. For an over 30-year process, John and his team finally did it, and John was awarded with a Special Achievement Oscar for creating the first ever computer animated feature. After years of trying and failing, Pixar didn't just succeed, but they changed the entire game and continue to influence stories that are being told to this day. Without the determination and passion of those like John Lasseter and Ed Catmull, who knows what the entire film industry would look like today. If you enjoyed this video, you might like some of my other videos that I've made. Thank you guys for the support. I'd love to hear your reactions to this story in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.